By definition, a coincidence is something that is remarkable, involving two or more unrelated things that still happens at the same time, or in a way that seems to relate the two. One of the key features of a coincidence is the fact that the things or events are in fact unrelated. But over time, we've come to doubt the very idea of a coincidence. People will remark, "Isn't that a coincidence?" in a knowing way that suggests they don't think it's a coincidence at all, and conspiracies abound that many coincidences must therefore be the exact opposite. But despite that, the world is still rife with true coincidences, things that seem like they have to be related, but somehow aren't. Number 10. Freddie King, Albert King, and B.B. King were all blues kings, but unrelated. If you're a fan of the blues, or even just good guitar playing in general, then you probably know B.B. King, who is also known by the nickname the King of Blues Guitar. It's a clever name with dual meaning thanks to King's name and the fact that the man was just really good at playing the blues. But he was also known by another name, or rather as part of another name, one of the three kings of the blues guitar. The three kings included B.B. King, Freddie King, and Albert King. They were all born within about a decade of one another and rose to fame in the 50s and 60s together, their careers overlapping for many years. All three men rose to prominence as incredible musicians, in particular for playing blues guitar, and it was sheer coincidence that all three were named King, and they were unrelated. Number 9. Robyn, Robyn S, and Robyn Schulz all have songs called Show Me Love. Show Me Love may not be the most creative sounding name for a song ever, but it certainly captured the imagination of more than one artist. By coincidence, it seemed to capture the imagination of three artists who all had basically the same name. American R&B singer Robyn S was the first to release Show Me Love back in 1993. Swedish singer Robyn released Show Me Love in 1997, which went on to create confusion as both were popular 90s dance hits. Robyn Schulz waited until 2015 to release his own Show Me Love, which was, once again, a dance hit, though it didn't get as popular as the first two. It still made trying to Google one specific song difficult in the present if you aren't sure who sang what. Number 8. Denmark keeps electing prime ministers named Rasmussen. Or what's in a name? If you're a Danish politician, maybe more than you'd think if you don't believe in coincidence. But if you do, then it's still interesting to note that Danes apparently have a real affinity for the name Rasmussen. As in, they elected 3 prime ministers in a row who were all named Rasmussen, even though they were unrelated. They liked the last one so much that they elected him again a few years later after taking a 4-year break for someone named Thorning-Schmidt. The reign of Rasmussen began in 1993, when Poul Nyrup Rasmussen was elected. In 2001, he was replaced by Anders Rasmussen, who served until 2009 when he resigned from office. That was when Lars Løkke Rasmussen took over. He only got 2 years in office, but the people of Denmark were willing to give him another shot when he was re-elected in 2015, and he stayed in office until 2019. Number 7. The word for dog in the Mbabaram language is also dog. Language is one of the most fascinating parts of human development, and when you look back through the history of language, it just gets more and more fascinating. You could pick any random word in English and trace its etymology, perhaps to French or German or Old English and Latin, and so on back through the centuries. But where did it start? When did the first person to ever name an apple call it, or what they called it, and why, and how? The creation of language out of literally nothing will not be a thing we can ever fully understand in the present, but we can at least appreciate some remarkable coincidences that can occur across languages that have nothing in common and could have nothing in common over their development. One of the most amazing coincidences comes to us in the form of the word dog. The etymology of dog in English gives us a dead end when we go back far enough. You could go back to Old English around 1,000 years ago, and then the trail runs dry. But remarkably, the same word appears in the Mbabaram language, one of the rarest languages in the world that was spoken by native Australians. Mbabaram has no ties to English whatsoever and evolved entirely separately with no influence. Somewhat more remarkable was how linguists traced the evolution of dog in that language from the earlier word godaga, which saw some mild phonetic changes over time to produce what they called a 1 in a million accidental similarity of form and meaning. Number 6. The Caduceus and the rod of Asclepius look similar by coincidence. In the medical community, you can commonly find 2 symbols used by organizations as part of their official logos. One is the Caduceus, a staff encircled by 2 snakes with a pair of wings on top. The other is the staff of Asclepius, a staff with a single snake winding around it to the top. You'll see both symbols on medical ID bracelets, but the staff is the official symbol of organizations like Medicalert, the American Medical Association, Yale School of Medicine, and more. The Caduceus, on the other hand, is the official symbol of the Surgeon General of the US Army and the US US Army Medical Corps. It's used by the Public Health Service and numerous medical businesses as well. So, what's the difference? The staff of Asclepius has been a symbol of medicine for years. Asclepius was a god of healing, but the Caduceus is associated with Hermes, a messenger god who had nothing to do with medicine. The image, however, is more balanced with the wings and snakes, and therefore more aesthetically pleasing. For that reason, since it looks sort of like the other symbol, it seems to have enjoyed widespread use as a result entirely by coincidence. It looks like the real symbol for medicine and healing, so it replaced the real symbol in many places. Number 5. Australia and America both have a store chain called Target with a Bullseye logo. Target, with its red Bullseye logo, is one of the most popular retailers in America and reported over $100 billion in revenue for 2022. Suffice to say, the chain is doing all right. But on the other side of the world, there's another chain of stores in Australia, also called Target, that also feature the exact same red Bullseye logo that has nothing at all to do with the American stores. The goods sold are also similar, with the Australian version selling clothes, toys, electronics, and so on, but not food. Target Australia is not owned by Kmart, contrary to rumours, but a company called Wesfarmers Limited. They filed their own copyright claim on the name and logo in Australia in 1968, a year after the American company did the same thing in America. Neither company really had any idea that the other existed. The name and logo similarities are entirely coincidental, and if you think about it, using a bullseye as a logo for a store called Target is a pretty much no-brainer, so it's not very hard to imagine how this happens. Though the copyright in Australia came a year later than the US one, the original stores, known as Lindsay's, actually date all the way back to 1926, making the Aussie version much older than the American one. Number 4, there's a UK Dennis the Menace which debuted on the exact same day as the US Dennis the Menace. In the age of social media, you'll see a lot of accusations of plagiarism if someone posts a joke online and then someone else posts that same joke sometime later. But the fact is that this kind of simultaneous discovery or synchronicity of thought is not unheard of, and it can get remarkably complex. One of the best examples of this is arguably Dennis the Menace, which was created in both the UK and the US at the exact same time, each with no knowledge of the other. Dennis the Menace appeared in comics on March 12, 1951 in both the UK and the US. The UK version appeared as a strip in a comic book and was created by David Law. The US version appeared in newspaper comic strips and was created by Hank Ketchum. Neither man knew the other, neither man had any idea that the other comic existed. Also, aside from the name, they aren't all that similar. The UK Dennis was much more of a menace than his US counterpart, who was more of a pest than anything else. When the two creators learned what was happening, they seemed to have mostly shrugged it off and agreed to keep doing what they were doing, acknowledging that the other was not a rip-off. That said, the UK version did end up known as Dennis and Gnasher. When Dennis the Menace movie was released in the UK, they just called it Dennis. Number 3, 2 postal workers in 2 different states shot up their workplaces on the same day. There was a time when the saying going postal had a very clear meaning for most people. It meant going on a rampage. It had become a sort of morbid joke that postal workers were inclined to grab a gun and shoot up their co-workers as a result of a series of shootings that started in the mid-1980s and claimed the lives of dozens of people. The postal shootings became so ubiquitous for a time that on May 6, 1993, it actually happened twice in 2 different states in totally separate and unrelated incidents. One shooting took place in Michigan, the other took place in California, and 3 people died as a result, while several others were injured. Number 2, anise, star anise, fennel, and licorice are unrelated. If you like black licorice, there's a good chance that you also enjoy anise and star anise, as they all have very similar flavors. You can lump fennel into that group too, as it also has a subtle licorice flavor. But despite the similarity, and especially when it comes to anise and star anise, which are obviously very closely related, at least in terms of names, none of these things are actually biologically related. The flavor similarity comes from an oil called anethol. You can also find it in licorice root and in fennel. All 4 have the same flavor as a result, even though the plants are not closely related in the biological sense of the word. Anise is actually more closely related to parsley and celery, while licorice is from the legume family. Number 1. Agatha Christie was once investigated by MI5 over a coincidental name. Imagine being such a good writer of mysteries that you actually start echoing reality with the stories that you make up, completely unintentionally, and in a way that makes the government investigate you because you've convinced them that you're a spy. That's what happened to Agatha Christie. In her book N or M, Christie created a character named Bletchley who knew some military secrets. MI5 had an issue with this because Christie was friends with someone named Dilly Knox, who happened to be a codebreaker at a secret facility in a place called Bletchley Park. Knox had helped break the Enigma codes, and his work was informing the movement of British spies. So, they had to find out if Christie somehow had learned this info. When Knox tried to stealthily inquire about why she named the character with secret info Bletchley, she explained that it was because she was stuck in Bletchley waiting for a train and hated it so much that she named her least likable character after the place. It was merely a coincidence, and that was the end of it.